So you said that you were, fresh off the boat as you went to Westminster Seminary, and you and I have a shared appreciation for Dr. Edmund Clowney. Was he like convincing you in real time of this redemptive historical hermeneutic? Were you convinced before you got to his class, or did he convince you?
No, yeah, I mean, like I had never even heard of that. Like,
Really?
yeah, like what's redemptive historical? Like, what
Yeah.
what does it even mean? Right? It's a buzzword. It's a slogan. Like, and he had a way of teaching, um, where he would just give sermons in class. Like, sure, he would give like a lecture on like the big principles. Hey, Luke 24, John 5, where Jesus says like these are scriptures that testify of me. The book of Acts 2, Peter's Pentecost sermon, or Paul in Acts 13 preaching, Pisidia in Pisidia Antioch. So like he would take those passages and give like the foundational theological stuff. But the way he did it was like he would just preach a rando like Old Testament text like in front of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And like he was a very like storytelling type. Like the way he preached was really like everybody wants to be like that, but you can't because he's the only guy that can do it. But he would like retell the entire story of like some massive Old Testament passage, and he would just retell the story like in his own way, in own words, and like he would say things like little applicatory things throughout it, and then and it's building up and it's building up, and it's like, okay, this is how we see Jesus here. Like he's in the story. So just kind of seeing it like practiced, and then a few of his like small books where that are like the example kind of like books of him, where he has like sermons basically like a chapter in every little kind of passage. He has a couple of those books where they're basically class sermons that he gave. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perhaps Preaching Christ in All of
Yeah,
Scriptures by
Preach
Edmund
Christ in all
Clowney.
scripture, right? Yeah. So and then his like first one, oh gosh, where is that book? It's on my shelf somewhere. um yeah, the first book he preached or he wrote, oh there it is. Yeah, the Unfolding Mystery.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like the original book of his, where he just goes through some key like principles, but then he goes through main text, the son of the woman, that's Genesis 3, right? Son of Abraham, the rock of Moses, the Prince of Peace, the Lord to come, like very basic passages, and he just does it. Like that's what he would do in class. He would just, it wasn't so much like being convinced, like, for me, it wasn't being convinced, necessarily like intellectually. It was more, yeah, I came out of a Pentecostal background where obviously like all preaching was about getting to the altar call. Like, so it was about Jesus,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was more like, yeah, it was more like in that way, right? Where every sermon was like an evangelistic sermon, and people went to that church and they didn't really get much out of the preaching. They got, what they got out of the word was on their own reading or their small group, or whatever they were doing on their own. And the preaching was more like, well, church is for the unbeliever. Like we want to preach evangelistically here, and get to the altar call. So, you become reformed and you're kind of like, altar calls, schmalter calls, right? Like get out of here,
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, well, how do I preach about Jesus without saying the same thing every week, and actually building up the saints and not just trying to convert the sinner? Like, how do I do that? And so, yeah, for me, it was more like like it was a satisfying approach. And it was like, yeah, sure, there's intellectual, sort of ammunition to it. But it was more this is how we preach about Jesus all the time from every passage of the Bible. And, to build up the church, number one, to build up the saints, to edify the saints, so that they can, for the work of the ministry, so that people can, give an answer for the reason for their hope when they're asked, right? So you're building up the church so that the church can do the work, right, of sharing the gospel. And sure, we want to preach Christ, and we want to, make the offer of the gospel and implore people to believe every single sermon. But just going through the Bible and seeing it, in that wonderful way. So yeah, I would encourage people, if you've ever heard of, Edmund Clowney, or redemptive historical, Christological preaching. Just go online, Google, Edmund Clowney, The Unfolding Mystery, or Preaching Christ and All of Scripture, like just key texts, key workbook, textbooks. But they're very easy to read, and yeah, I just think they're beautiful.